James from Australia. James, can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay.
Hey, James.
So when we left off, you were talking about religiosity in America compared to the rest of the world. And I think Ethan was going to lead off on this.
Yeah, I mean, as I had briefly said, when I think of religiosity in America, I think of my family, and I think of a lot of the Trump supporters who genuinely believe that he was sent here by God or Jesus. It's rooted in everyday life. It's in our schools. It's in our government, and I don't think it should be. I think we need to eliminate it as much as possible from our government. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sort of. I was more thinking kind of like along the lines of, how it has permeated into basically every structure in American society. And when you look at that compared to the rest of the Western world, we obviously have religions in Australia, and we're a majority Christian country, but yet Christianity doesn't seem to have permeated with its influence over politicians or even really the general public compared to what it has in America. So I'm just more thinking, how that happens.
Now, I got to admit that this is kind of a blind spot for me because I haven't spent a lot of time in other countries. Now, I grew up in the Philippines, and the Philippines is a completely different ball game, right? Religion is very deeply ingrained in family structures there. Pretty much every family that you meet is going to be either Catholic or Buddhist, or it's some part of a religious structure, and it's so ingrained into their family structure. I don't know if it necessarily leaches into their politics, but there's a lot of nepotism in Filipino politics, so I wouldn't be too surprised there. So I don't know how it compares, but I think that it's deeper than people think, right? Like here in Ohio, there are still some counties with laws that you cannot purchase alcohol before 12 o'clock noon on Sunday. And this is a law that had a religious basis, right? And there are so many other laws that we have that have started from a religious basis that maybe we just haven't realized we haven't crossed off the books yet, or that we just don't meaningfully enforce. How many state constitutions, for example, still say that in order to qualify for public office, you must believe in a higher power? Right? And that's written in state constitutions. Now, I don't know how strongly enforced they are. And some of them are only in the books because nobody's bothered to go in there and scratch them off, but they're there. And I think that as a world blind American myself, I don't think we spend enough time realizing just how deeply religion is ingrained into our everyday lives. I mean, why do you think we get Sundays and Saturdays off? That's, part of that is so that we can go to church. So a lot of it has to do with it, and I don't think we're aware. And I appreciate that it's people like you who are bringing this up to us. So coming from the outside then, what do you see that we're not seeing?
Yeah.
What you're not saying, that's a good question. I think that because there are so many Christians or religious people actively involved in the government and in lawmaking and just in positions of power, that for them to try and think any other way except via their religious beliefs impacting their regular life, it would be, it's just impossible to get out of that cycle, I think.
Okay. Well, for me, we're and I talked about this on my last appearance when I was on the nonprofits plug, is that it's very difficult. Like our internal moral compass is built out of a conglomeration of a whole bunch of different experiences. Some of it is from our upbringing. Sometimes we learned that what we learned when we were younger is wrong, and we've changed. Some of it is brought into us from religious structures, and some of it from just being in the society around us. And I think it's very difficult to take a look at any one moral belief and say, you know what, it's religion that did that. Because religion will teach us a lot that it turns out it's actually a pretty good idea. Like one of the commandments is thou shalt not steal. Yeah, we probably should keep that in the books. Just because it's in the Bible doesn't mean it's necessarily bad, but it also doesn't necessarily mean it's Christian, right? So if someone knows not to steal, and grows up in a society that teaches thou shalt not steal, are they growing up, is that a Christian value, or is it just, yeah, you know what, this is a good idea that we live in a society where people have, people don't steal other people's stuff. So I don't know where to draw that line between this belief came from religion and this belief came from living in our society. What's your take on this?
Also, from my understanding, we got our religiosity significantly increased in like 54 and 56 as a response to communism. Like they added "God in God We Trust" to coin, and then shortly after that, the flag. And I can't remember the date, but that's when they also installed a prayer room in the White House shortly after that. So. I think it increased during that time. And now, unfortunately, people continue to propagate the myth that America is a Christian-founded country.
And I think, and I think part of that is like there was instances like you were talking about, Ethan, where religion was intentionally put in. And those are the ones that are easy to say, okay, let's snip this out. This is exactly where you're starting to cross the boundary between religion and government, and this is where you need to stop. Then there are some other places where it's not entirely clear how that happened. Like, why is it that all the malls here in Ohio are closed on Easter and Christmas? Like, I have shopping to do, right? So, it's like, why do you choose these particular days? Now, you can make the argument that it just happens to be, since we're here, since we're in Ohio and a lot of people celebrate Easter, not a lot of people are shopping, so it doesn't make sense to open the stores, right? So it's a chicken and egg thing. Which came first? Stores are closed because nobody shops, or nobody shops, therefore the store's closed. I don't know. And it's fun to think about. And James, and where I really want to know is, what do we look like? Do we look like a Christian nation to Australia? Because I have no idea. I
don't think so.
Like, I can't look in a mirror as well as somebody can look at me. So tell me what it is. And I get it. It's just it's one person's opinion, but I want to know from you: are we that much more religious and that much more blatantly religious than other countries?
I think. So I've lived in the US and I've lived in Europe. So I think from the outside, I think Americans have the perception of definitely being more blatantly religious than the rest of the world. But then again, I think that really does come down to be honest, what sort of the political spectrum you fall on from the outside, because it certainly seems like from the outside, there is absolutely one side of your political spectrum that absolutely grounds itself in its Christian belief, and that is unshakable. And so that does really look like
now there's some very strong recent history that will show how the religious got involved with politics. It's not a phenomenon that's always existed. It turns out that this is somewhat recent. I can't argue with that there does seem to be that side, but the other side of that is, us atheists, we're all over the spectrum. Atheism is an answer to one question only, and it tells us nothing at all about religious or about political leanings, about economic beliefs or philosophies, literally anything else. So while the people may seem louder about associating religion with their political beliefs, I don't know that religiosity doesn't also affect other side. They're just not quite as vocal about it. Like you'll hear just as many people say Jesus was a socialist, right? You've seen those, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So there are people on the, there are people on, we'll just call them Team Blue, that are just as religious as people who are on Team Red. It's just they're not quite as vocal about how it influences their politics.
Right. I mean, the Republican Party has essentially become the party of God and guns, and they have no problem saying that routinely. Although I will say this regarding QAnon, quick off topic, I have a few QAnon people on my Facebook. Yeah. And why are you looking at me like that?
I'm just glaring at you because you're about to open up a can of worms that okay, let's talk about QAnon really quickly, but okay, let's hear it. Go ahead.
QAnon?
Go ahead.
So now a couple of them are posting that like stick to the plan. I don't know what's going on, but two of them on my Facebook keep insisting there is some plan, and they're apparently getting messages about something. It's like, where is this coming from? Who's this Q person? And why do you believe all this stuff?
I actually know the answers to those, Ethan. So you remember how in the beginning of the show we said how I always message you afterwards saying, "What did you learn today?"
Yes.
Your message today is going to be about this. James, I got to move on to other callers, but do you have any last thoughts about what we can do now that we are aware that religiosity spreads into so much of our culture?
No, I just think, American atheists are definitely becoming more prominent and more vocal, but I just think that, in my opinion only, that just needs to continue and become a bit forceful and a bit louder and stronger, especially if you can get atheists, elected into, high public offices. That would be a really good thing.
I'm going to refer you to Hemant Mehta, aka the Friendly Atheist, because he actually keeps track on a Google document of people who are in government positions who are atheist or non-religious.
Really?
Like he keeps strong track of this, and it's fun watching that list get longer and longer.
I am going to have to ask him.
We are working on it, James. I absolutely promise you, we're on this.
So, I mean, here's the thing, James. We in America and people watching right now, there is one more reason why you should start a YouTube channel. We need more outspoken atheists out there. The more we normalize atheism, the more we're going to be able to run for offices and continue moving forward.
Well, thank you very much, James, for giving us your insight. And I got a good, long, hard look at a mirror, and I know what I know that I need to do more about this. So, thank you very much for giving us the call tonight.
Yeah,
thanks,
James. That's not a problem. Right, thanks.
QAnon, really, Ethan?
The look you gave me when you were just like, like, what did I do, dude?
I don't know. We're trying to keep. I'll message you after the show.
Well, so here's another thing. This person is insisting, the one of the people that messaged me, I'm trying to get them to call the show, but she's insisting that the belief in the Satanists, pedophiles, is not true, despite the fact that we have video evidence of people from QAnon saying that's what they believe. For some reason, she's saying that's a small minority of the group, and there's much more to it. So hopefully I can get her to call in and find out what she's talking about.
And if you want to talk to Ethan more about QAnon, we'll drop your links off at the end of the show, and we'll drop off ours too. Like it's one of those things. It's such a big topic. There's no possible way we can meaningfully cover it in a 10-minute phone conversation, which unfortunately is what we're limited to here, right? But there's a lot to talk about, and it is interesting.